No problem. It's 6:47, and welcome to today, Tuesday, March 6th, the Finance Committee's meeting to discuss mostly, I'll call the infrastructure part of our operating budget for fiscal year 19. We have basically three segments that I plan on going through. The segments that I've sort of, in my mind, set up were infrastructure, more cultural with the Stevens Estate, not Stevens, with the library, the youth, and the seniors. And then the third segment being basically the economic development, and then we can have catch-all. For my team members here, that isn't to say that just because that's what we have on the next today and next two meetings, doesn't mean that if you have questions regarding any other elements of the budget, that questions can be and should be asked. But I wanted to basically focus on at least what I thought was the most important elements of this year's budget. Also, too, a recognition, because this is like a couple years old, I just want to recognize Karen for passing out these little stickers that has helped me flag and get prepared for our meeting today. And they work.
There'll be a little something extra in your next page.
That's right.
I was just speaking on Tim's behalf.
With that, I'm asking Chris McClure to come forward first to talk about this information technology budget, prior year objectives, accomplishments, current year plans and objectives. And right now, for those who are looking for it on the budget, his budget starts on page 191. Did you, obviously you got a refresh book here and there. So, Chris, the floor is yours.
Sure. So I'd like to
Just introduce yourself a little bit for those, for the public.
Very well, yes. I'm Chris McClure, IT Director. This will be my third year in North Andover. So I think one of the bigger accomplishments that we've done in IT over the last 3 years is some significant staff restructuring, I think, that sets us up to be in a stronger position. We have a IT director position. We have a full-time network administrator position, which I'll talk to more when you get your security questions. Initially, when I started, we had 2 full-time technicians and found that we were, from an IT director standpoint, I was spending, somewhere 40–50% of my time doing administrative tasks, paying bills, doing orders, that sort of thing. That really was not a good, effective use of that time. So we consolidated, created one technician position and created a new administrative assistant position that's really paid dividends just in terms of the capacity. This year we also upgraded, we had a retirement, one of the help desk technicians to a systems administrator position with more of a focus on the higher end server piece and security piece at sort of a higher level than a basic help desk position. So in the 2 years or 3 years that I've been here, we've done some pretty substantial restructuring that I think has really allowed us to have more capacity and to be responsive to things. In terms of prior accomplishments, this year we were awarded $50,000 from the Mass Compact Grant. We were able to use that for some document scanning. They wanted to see things that had a public impact. So we had a pretty aggressive document scanning list laid out. So we were able to do about exactly $50,000 worth of land record scanning that we are also attaching to our public GIS mapping component, so that those records will be accessible through the website going forward. And we're probably about 60–70% done with that project, so that's coming along nicely. We also coupled that with some CPC funding and some other funding within budgets to do some old payroll scanning and do some other documents to make those available. Not all those will be available on the website, but internally to make that more convenient. We, if you haven't noticed, updated all the websites. So the town website, the police website, the fire website, the youth and rec website have all been updated. I think they look pretty good. The focus was on a more responsive design. so that if you view it on a tablet or a mobile device, it looks good no matter what ratio you're viewing that on. It's also an entirely web-based interface, so it's easier for us to manage, but I think that came out pretty good. I can go over a lot of accomplishments, but I don't. I don't know if you want to get to questions first. We developed internally some cool pieces. I think in the past we've talked about having our staff portal, sort of an intranet where people can go and get access to a lot of the different resources, and also a great central point for them to go and access that. So working with the town manager, we actually took these goals for the budget and turned them into a tracking database, so that there's some accountability in terms of what the goals are, when they were met, how they're looking, et cetera. So Andrew can actually review those on a whatever basis he wants to look at, see when things are due, if they're past due, et cetera. And so that just adds some accountability to that budget and goal tracking piece. That's a new piece this year.
I like that.
So that's sort of one example of some of those pieces. We continue to upgrade the infrastructure. We have put in our second VxRail hyperconverged virtual server for some redundancy, so that's been a great investment over the past couple of years. From a structural standpoint, we've developed a rolling 5-year infrastructure plan, so the major components of our infrastructure get replaced sort of annually on a 5-year rolling basis, so that we're staying up to date on that and not falling behind. That's in addition to replacing the workstations, on the same sort of 4 to 5 year rolling basis that people use. The new Public Works building just opened. It was fairly smooth from an IT standpoint, getting those the data drops and resources migrated over. And we actually helped police and fire in the last year migrate to a new public safety software that's had no major problems going forward. But
So it's had minor problems?
let me rephrase. From an IT standpoint, it's gone smooth. It's a big change, sort of like when we put Munis in. So I think there's some growing pains with learning the new software,
Okay.
but it was successful.
Okay. The floor is open to anyone who wants to ask questions.
So internally, we have our network administrator and our systems administrator who maintain the servers on a day-to-day basis. We also leverage support contracts with the various vendors because a lot of this stuff is fairly sophisticated and complex at this point. So anytime we're making an investment in hardware, software, we're always including professional support services along with that, just to make sure that we've got that support baked into it.
So the various applications that you have built,
Mm-hmm.
so they are maintained by these private parties that you said, consultants, or the companies, or the town maintains that?
So on a
its
day-to-day
own server?
basis, we maintain.
You maintain.
So for routine work, we maintain those on a day-to-day basis. If there are service packs or upgrades to the software that need to be maintained, or sort of extraordinary problems, we have support
And you
baked
have
into
backup
that.
servers as well.
Yes, yes,
Good, thank you.
yeah.
So tell me about who's your backup management responsibilities? Who are the people in particular?
So a lot of that work fell on our network administrator traditionally, but with the addition of the systems administrator, that role is taking over the backup responsibilities. So we've got a little bit of a cross training and backup in that area. So that was one of the concerns with our structure before, is there was some not a lot of cross training and cross support from the network standpoint of some of those higher level systems support. So there's not 100%. You really can't with that level of specialization, but we have more of that high level on-site support with those positions now.
So that they can refer to reference manuals and whatnot?
Yeah, so again, I think one of the things we've done really well is the idea of institutional knowledge. So we have captured through our various platforms, writing down what we know, making it so that people can access that, as well as leveraging documentation from the various vendors and making sure that that gets published. So I think one of the things we've done well across the board, not just in IT, but taking what we know from the vendors, from our own experience, storing that and making sure that's in a place that the people who need can get to it. And one of the things we started doing on the town side as well is video documentation. So if we're doing training or we're doing other things, capturing that, and NCAM's been a great partner in that and helping us, whether it's going to be something that's for the public or internal, so that we can make that available on our portal so that people can actually view that training on demand on their own time.
Kudos on the online tool where you can put in your taxes, and then it will show you how it's distributed throughout the town budget.
Yeah, so that was, we worked with Andrew last year on that initiative.
I hadn't noticed it before. It's very cool.
We had looked and saw other visual budgets online, and the price tag for some of those was pretty steep. So we looked at how we could leverage what tools we had to get to about 85% of what some of the more expensive tools. I think we get to the most important parts of it, and then we update that every year with the new budget, and it's a good way of showing people where their tax dollars go.
Where would you say North Andover is on the spectrum of Stone Age and very advanced in terms of the e-government initiatives, like being able to pay your parking bill online and consumer-facing IT-enabled transactions that either can raise revenue or be more efficient?
I would say, and there's a sort of saying in IT, you want to be on the leading edge, not the bleeding edge of technology. I think, especially with the investments in our website, we are working on some final pieces with our financial system to do some more e-commerce pieces online, but we do offer pretty robust e-commerce. I know for a fact that our online permitting is ahead of most other communities just in terms of the volume that we offer, and we have plans to roll out even more of that in the workflow around that. We've done some kind of cool new things. So there's an online chat feature that's available during the day for people that they can ask live questions during the day. We also just rolled out that eGov solution where you can ask your Google Home or your Amazon right now some questions. So the most powerful thing it can do is tell you when meetings are coming up. So that's as bleeding edge as we get, but that's kind of a safe place to take a risk. There are communities out there that are doing more. For where we are and our size and our budget and what we're doing, I think we're always trying to offer more services. I think one of the things that IT does well in this town is not so much focus on the shiny things, but do the basic things really well. So we've got a really solid website, and we put a lot of content out. So we're sending email, tweeting, putting items on Facebook almost I know for a fact daily. All the agendas for all public meetings get sent out, so there's that transparency. So I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a town our size that's putting out as much content, as much useful content as we do to the public, and making the services that we offer useful and easy to use.
So, go ahead, Sasha.
Could you talk a little bit about your FTEs? And it looks like there was a position added last year, and then kind of increased this year on the school side, and what that looks like and why that's required.
Yeah, so there's a structure that we share some of the salary for the IT director on the school side traditionally. And this year, through some of the discussions with the town and the school over budget, there was an agreement to take more of that in our budget. So that really represents that increase.
And a change, not.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So a question I sort of teed you up with earlier
Yeah.
before we started has to do with security. And don't hear much of it recently, but we have heard of towns being held hostage, their data being held hostage. What investment have you put into our IT infrastructure that doesn't give us a 100% guarantee, but definitely gives us, allows us to sleep at night?
Yeah. So I will speak generally. You want to speak too specifically about it, exact security measures we're taking. But I think a lot of what I said leading up into this, there's not one thing you do for security, it's layers. And I think the town is very in a good position because of the continued investment we've made for a long time. So I think if you look at some of the horror stories in some of these towns, a lot of cases there was no staff. There were years of no reinvestment. There were some fundamental breakdowns that happen. And never going to say that we're doing everything or that we can't, we're not susceptible, because I don't want to jinx myself. But So basic things. We have a robust staff, a professional staff. We have a network administrator. We're fortunate to have that. A lot of communities do not have that role. So having one person whose job it is to think about the network and security all the time. We have good support relationships with our vendors. We have diverse vendors, so all our eggs aren't in one basket in terms of how we invest. From a day-to-day basis, we reinvest in our technology. So we're buying new computers, we're buying new servers, we're buying new switches, we're buying new firewalls, we're making sure that those are updated with the latest firmware, we're making sure that we've got good practices around that. And a lot of, like with the WannaCry virus, a lot of those were targeting older XP machines that had just gotten put online and hadn't been updated in 10 years. We're watching things, so we're pushing out Windows 10, much to the chagrin of a lot of the users who would rather have Windows 7, but Windows 7 is retiring in a few years, and we have to have that timeline so that we're on top of that so that we can still push those updates out. We have managed Windows updates so that we're pushing that patch out so that all of our computers are updated frequently. We have a managed antivirus platform, so that gets updated. We have limited access for our users, so almost all users have very limited access in terms of what they can do from like a local administrator standpoint. They have granular access in terms of what resources they can have access to, so that's, if damage can be done from a particular account, it's restricted to a core area. There's physical security. There's a redundancy. So we've got server clusters in multiple physical locations, backup in physical locations. By being now, over the last couple of years, 100% virtual environment, we can take snapshots of every single one of our servers. So if we're doing a restore, we're doing a full, as it was at the last image restore, not a bare metal restore where you're going back and reloading everything. So the recovery time for disaster is much faster and easier to manage. We're leveraging the cloud where it makes sense. And we can talk more about the cloud specifically. But
which cloud service are you using?
So like the school, we're a Google. We use Google Apps, which is a professional product that we pay for. It's for the what you get, there's a high value. It's very manageable, and that includes email, calendar, contacts, some documents, some web services. But for the most part, we don't store anything secure. We don't store social security numbers. We don't store that sort of information, police records, et cetera, in the cloud. But
okay.
Have you ever thought, maybe it's not really for you, maybe the town, has any proposal ever come to you where we can put ads on the website and generate more income? Because of all the technology, all the advancements that you have made, making the whole site very interesting, you're drawing more and more people to the site. And if we have a ticker running with ads or something, maybe we can generate more income to the town. We have to come up with avenues to generate more income.
so that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
That from a technological standpoint, that's one discussion. That from a policy standpoint, and you get into some interesting procurement and sort of other issues that are not technological issues around that. So I would happily discuss that, but I think that's a discussion beyond beyond technology.
But no proposal of that kind has ever come, right?
It's
Still working on billboards for Little League.
yeah, it's nothing that we've discussed seriously. I know other towns have done other pieces, but.
But I think, with all the modernization, we need to now go there.
It's about reviewing.
Yes.
Not offering
Yeah.
Of course, of
solutions. I know,
course.
so
Yeah,
let's-
there's some very nuanced
Yes, thank
aspects
you.
of that discussion.
Yeah,
that-
sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
So this is a nit, but it's the same numbers as last year. The other funding, what do you get from Verizon or Comcast? And that's another
Oh,
way
absolutely.
of trying to squeeze them for some more money or something.
No, that's actually very pertinent because we're in the middle of contract renewal negotiation with Verizon. So there is a mechanism for PEG access that actually is the same thing that funds NCAM, where typically you would do a 10-year contract for a cable license. That's actually changing a little bit with the technology changing so rapidly. So as part of that negotiation, years ago, there used to be a thing called an iNet. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the iNet, but it was a coaxial-based network that was used to distribute the video return from the different buildings for your public access. And at some point that became very expensive and difficult to maintain. So the cable companies basically bought out towns by paying them money to invest in fiber infrastructure. So a lot of towns, when we have our dark fiber network, which is an incredible thing, a lot of that was purchased in towns by that PEG money so that they would not have to maintain that coaxial network. So the trade-off is that becomes part of our town infrastructure fiber network, and we have to maintain switching and paths and security and all that sort of stuff to make that work, so that that PEG access, because they're riding on that fiber network. So any capital funds that the town receives through Verizon and Comcast as part of that PEG, we only get the capital portion, and CAM gets there's an operating portion as well that funds our operating expenses, goes to invest in that network. So that money is spent on fiber, on switching, on that sort of thing to maintain and make sure that network stays in good shape, but it can only be spent for those purposes. Okay. And that's negotiated with the contract with the cable companies.
When is that contract up?
The Verizon is up this June, and the Comcast is a couple years after that, and we usually start negotiating a few years out. So we've been in negotiation with Verizon for going on 2 years now with this one. So,
other questions? Keep us up and running,
okay.
please. Thank you very much, Chris. So it's a play on words, and I apologize. Stanford and Sons, please.
Did you rehearse that all?
No, it just came to me. Things like that just sort of. So James, is it Jim or James?
It's Jim. It's Jim Stanford.
Jim, introduce yourself, and we can introduce ourselves to you as well. But right now, the order we have is your general public works, then walking into the water and sewer enterprises, and then youth services will be last up, if that's okay with you.
Okay, great.
So,
Well, thank you. Jim Stanford. I am Public Works Director, going on almost a year now. This month, later this month, it'll be 1 year. Still getting into the system and getting used to the process here. I am joined, if I may, I am joined by a few key members of my staff, only because I'm sure that there are going to be questions that I just can't answer. So if I could just introduce them as well, if that would be okay. We have John Bergese, he's the Assistant Director, Town Engineer.
hey, John.
We have Glen Alt, he's the Water Treatment Superintendent. And we have Tim Willet, who is the Operations Manager.
Very good.
And obviously, we have Rick Gorman, who is part of Youth Services, and I'm sure well-known. So, as you mentioned, so we're here for infrastructure. Public Works is responsible for a good segment of the infrastructure in town, just about anything within the public right-of-way, the streets. We also oversee parks and maintenance of the fields. And one of our bigger tasks is this time of year, unfortunately, is the winter maintenance, including salting and the roads and plowing, as well as school. We do the parking lots for the schools as well. The general public works budget does consist of 6 departments. It's administration, refuse, streets and sidewalks, structures and grounds, fleet, and as I mentioned, the snow maintenance as well. Overall, our budget overall comes in, if you total all 6 of those, at $4,775,727. That represents an increase of 1.53%. We don't have any staffing changes other than within the admin budget. We have requested some intern help. Summer interns, no benefits, just to hopefully get some local college students, some local students to help out with some of the major construction projects that we do have ongoing. We do have a little bit of a backlog as far as our roads program goes. We have a couple of other projects that are coming up that Thanks to Planning and Development, we received a grant, a MassWorks grant, to redo Route 125 near Butcher Boy, including addition of sidewalks on both sides of the road. So it's a pretty exciting project. It's going to be a pretty aggressive project that'll take place this summer. We're working with planning and to secure whatever easements. It is through the state. It's a state road, but it is a municipally managed project. So that's one of the major projects that we're going to have this year. In addition to that, we do have, we're finishing up the High Water Elm Street, the streetscape, as well as the roadway and drainage improvements. So that'll be underway as soon as weather allows. And then we have just our general maintenance responsibilities, mowing the fields, and which go throughout the summer season. We do have 2 new initiatives this year. One is implementing a tree replacement program. It's in the past, the department has replaced trees as needed when we've taken some down, mostly through funding through NGRID. They've had a program where we've been able to get some replacements, but the town itself has never put together a program. So I'm in the process of putting that together, and it represented we're going to start off with a $20,000 increase within the budget, within the streets and sidewalks budget, so that we can do a greater deal of a number of tree replacements ourselves.
Have you identified those areas where you plan on replacing?
We haven't. One of the goals, what we're going to try and do is work within our roads program. So as we're reconstructing a street, trying to look at everything, every part of that street, as well as drainage, not just the overlay of the pavement, but adding drainage, looking at curbing, looking at guardrails, and tree replacements if possible. Not all areas we can fit trees due to the limited right-of-way. So we're looking at expanding the project, probably if we can obtain easements to plant trees, but that's something that's still a little further out. So we haven't identified any specific areas, but ideally we'd probably get the best benefit if we could do it within our overall roads program.
Okay.
What sparked that initiative?
That was a Board of Selectmen working through the town manager.
Thank you.
The other initiative is the Sidewalk Initiative. Now, we've always, through the capital plan, we have put money in every year to do sidewalk maintenance. This initiative is going to look at actually doing extensions. Now, this year, as I mentioned, through the 125 MassWorks grant, we will be installing a couple thousand feet of sidewalks. But before we get to other areas in town, we have another grant that was obtained through the regional planning, and they're doing an assessment of our existing sidewalks. Once we have that assessment done, we can look at filling in where it makes sense to fill in gaps. And again, that was initiated through the Board of Selectmen. I think through the master plan as well. I attended some of those meetings. It was a really big topic of discussion that residents were looking for, trying to a little more on the connectivity. So we've always done maintenance. Again, we're going to have to have some flexibility, just like with our roads program. One of the things that I've found since I've been here, you've got a lot of other activities going on outside of our control, like the gas company. The gas company this past year was doing a considerable amount of upgrades to their mains. Caused a little bit of disruption, Peters Street and even on Main Street. But overall, it gives us a better product because they replace their mains, we come in, we redo the road afterwards. It's an efficient way. Whereas if you wouldn't want to go out and pave a road and then have the gas company have a leak, and inevitably it always happens, but they've been pretty proactive, and we just met with them recently to go over this year's plan, and so that we're coordinating the work as opposed to,
Does the gas company help, or any of the utilities help when they dig up the road as far as the cost goes?
It really depends. If we are already scheduled a road to be done, then no, it's actually more of a savings to them in that they don't have to do a permanent patch. In other areas where we don't have a roadway improvement, we're making them put a permanent patch. It's more in the coordination, and it saves in the long run. It's not a direct savings or they're not monetarily adding, but from a coordination standpoint, it really helps. Just as part of our meeting recently, we did bring up a couple of roads that we're going to be doing that they weren't aware of, and they're going to mobilize and they're going to look to see if they can upgrade their mains in those before we get to those areas.
Okay.
So I mean, I'd be happy to go over any questions you have on those departments.
Jen?
Yep, thank you. There is a 71% increase in repairs and maintenance on streets and sidewalk budget. Do we expect that to kind of carry forward year after year with more repairs and more maintenance because we're not proactively maintaining streets and sidewalks? And sorry, you don't want me to put this up on the screen. I don't know if I can.
The people, on pages 160.
68. It's the top grid under expenses, third down, repairs and maintenance. Again, it's not a big number, but I'm just wondering if it's a trend that we're going to continue to see.
Obviously, as infrastructure ages, it does cost more, just by the fact that construction costs seem to be going up this year, just because of the amount of work that's going on out there, private as well as public. If you look at the overall budget, though, we were only up 3.3%.
Yeah.
So what we did is we did some shifting. That was one of the things when I came in, I started looking at how where we really coding things, or if there was a better way of doing it. So in a lot of cases, we had been using other charges and expenses, so that line item dropped substantially, and we reallocated the funds into the maintenance. Overall, my assessment, the town has done a very good job, especially with their roads. They've come up with a plan that's been in place now, capital plan, for quite a while. And they actually show you in advance, 5 years in advance, as to what roads they're going to be paving, which I think is quite unique for a municipality. So I do think that they've been very, very proactive.
I totally in agreement with you. The question is this a continued trend that we'll see climbing costs on repairs and maintenance? We're just trying to understand for future.
I think, I don't have a crystal ball, obviously. It's used, construction costs will go up and down with the economy.
Okay, so it's obviously it's dependent on labor cost
Yep.
and need. Got it.
And if you look at the actual for 2017, Jen, it was $87,000.
Right. You know, it's not that much. I'm just
No, I get it.
future planning.
Could you let us know what materials and supplies, why that fluctuates? So I just find it interesting that it was, closer to $20,000 in 2016, up to 40, back to 20, and then now we're requesting 40 again. So just a little bit curious about that.
Some of it has to do with the amount of drainage that we're doing on a road area. Some of it has to do with just some things deteriorate. A lot of the materials are castings, drainage structures.
Okay.
We have been putting a lot more effort into the drainage.
Okay.
This is a broad question, but since you own a good chunk of the town budget, you mentioned it, and I'm going to continue asking the question, I guess. I'll ask the question. You received a grant to do a study. What are we doing as a town, even within your department, if you can answer it, to identify grant-type monies that can supplement and do things for us that our town budget doesn't have the means to do?
I've been impressed since I've gotten here as to how everybody in every division and department outside of Public Works looks at grant opportunities. Every week I'm receiving emails from other departments, other divisions, grant opportunities from the regional planning. So there's an awful lot of that just taking place. The other thing that I've been involved in for the last few months is through the Sustainability Committee. And you have volunteers who are actually going out trying to get grant money. So it's, I've been impressed. It's, again, I think money isn't always available. I mean, it's always a tough thing. It's always a challenge. But I think so far, because of the planning that's been involved, just like with the MassWorks grant and the timing of projects, I think that plays a lot into obtaining some of these grants. So you have to be aggressive. They are time-consuming, I will tell you that.
Okay. Good. Any other questions? Yay?
It might be like slightly off topic, so I apologize, but just in advance. But we're seeing just from a public standpoint, a big push and ask for additional trash receptacles around town. And I'm just wondering how, you hear people complain about it, so how that would impact your budget, and if, in terms of maintaining those and what that looks like.
When you say trash reset, are you saying the dumpsters at like school facilities
No,
or just
like a trash can.
individual for public parks, or are you talking like residents?
Yeah, for example, if there's an area of town that people tend to travel on, like walk or whatever else, and there's no trash cans, you'd have residents ask for a trash can to be put somewhere. Just wondering what that looks like from a cost perspective in order to manage something like that. Because now you have someone that has to go pick it up and change the bags and and maintain it, and so
That's always a struggle, and generally the largest part of that is during the summer. Obviously, as more people are walking around, we do get those requests quite a bit. One of the things, and in fact, the Lake Study Group that I'm involved in, and a few of us in the department are, they just put in a request for some additional cans, receptacles. And so what we're doing is we're looking at, does it make more sense to maybe change the locations of some of the existing ones to try and keep the cost down?
Okay.
It does present a burden as far as personnel.
Yeah, absolutely.
It takes quite a bit of time. I'm sure Mr. Willet could talk about exactly how many man-hours it does take. So we try, we'd like not to add, but if we can rearrange, then I think that's a more cost-effective manner.
Okay. Just, do you know by any chance how many man-hours it takes? Just out of pure curiosity, if you could best guess.
We send a two-man crew out Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the summer months, especially to, do that trash route of probably 20 properties, 20 barrels.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Karen?
Could you refresh my recollection about the recycling fees?
Certainly.
That would be on page 171. I recall something, but not completely. There's a big jump from 2017 actual to projected. I think we're going from 10 to 45.
So you're, so the solid waste or the refuse involves a few items. It involves, so we have a contractor that does the north side that picks up the recycling, and we pay a hauling fee for that. We also have a new solid waste contractor who's picking up the trash, and that's JRM. There is a percentage increase in their, I believe it's a 10-year contract. So each year that is going up a certain percentage. I don't have those numbers, exact numbers with me right now. I can certainly get those for you.
So a couple of years ago, we entered into a recycling contract where Northside brings our recycling to JRM in Peabody on Route 1, and we get paid. So there's no more all of this odds and ends recycling. We get a set fee per ton of what is brought to the JRM plant.
Karen, you gotta look at, if you look at this revenue chart, they only have the revenue for the projections for 18 and 19 in one line item. It's really the total of all of the recycling
thank
items
you.
there.
Thank you.
So it's not that big of a jump.
There's no more separation. It's all one fee.
It's just one piece. Yeah.
Correct.
All right. Great. Thank you.
couple more questions, at least for my part. What is EPA, NPD, ES, Phase 2, MS4 permit? And what does it take to do something like that? And who's responsible for that funky acronym and everything else?
I can speak at length on this because it's something that every community that's been designated as a NPDES, it's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, MS4. It's more or less, it was EPA working under the guides of the Clean Water Act. They regulate drainage. And seeing how we collect drainage, and we're a public entity, they came out in 2003, they issued a MS4 permit, small municipal separator permit, to just about every municipality in this area, designated as an urban area. The initial permit, like anything with the EPA, started out with just a couple of conditions. Best management practices, you have to file for the permit, you have to do an annual update. From what I can see, North Andover, we've been in very good compliance with that. It's things that we already do. We sweep streets, we maintain our drainage system. Not a very, it's something, again, the community has always wanted, and to keep the community up and the streets and the infrastructure in good working order. It was a 3-year permit or a 5-year permit, and it just kept getting extended and extended. EPA over the last 5 years has tightened the regulations, and they actually implemented a new permit with a whole lot of additional requirements that, and it was to go into effect this past summer, July 1st, but they extended another year. So we're still looking. We have a consultant who puts together our plan, make sure that we're in compliance with that program.
So you use an outside consultant?
We do, yes.
And the low ball, the slow ball question is, so where's the sidewalk on 125 going to and from? Or is it too soon to ask?
No. We still have some easements to work out, but essentially it'll be from just about the Joe Fish property on that side up to past the new development up to the insurance company. And then on the opposite side, and again, we still have some easements to work out, it's going to be from Barker Farm, hopefully ideally down to Butcher Boy.
Good. What do they do with the telephone poles? Is that the town responsible for putting those lines in the ground, or is that the utility, or both?
If you're referring to the project that was done in,
Well, right, in that area. I know.
that's a developer. As far as the utility poles go, there will be some relocations, not underground, because we are doing some widening as well as with the sidewalk, so there are some impacts to a number of the poles. The utility company is responsible by state law to move those, not underground them, but to move the poles back. But they also, in working with the developer, I believe the developer is assuming some of those costs.
Is there a benefit to having, besides aesthetic, is there a benefit to having the lines buried in terms of reliability of service, or is the grid so interconnected that if something goes down 100 miles from now, it can shut us down?
I think the conventional thinking was that, yes, underground does provide, especially in windstorms, you don't have to worry about trees, but it does, the cost aspect of it. But there are certainly some benefits, especially as we've seen with these windstorms. I mean, this latest storm knocked out power to a number of different areas. Earlier last year in October, the storm, it wasn't so much, it was, the power knockout wouldn't have been aided by underground utilities. So I guess it is a hit or miss type of proposition. As far as undergrounding, as you probably know, there was an undergrounding project in the old center.
Right.
And that's going to be continuing down Main Street as well. It's probably within the next 5 or 6 years. Assistant Director John Borghese is overseeing that project. I believe Ray Santilli oversaw the previous one. So we are, and again, it does have, in addition to the aesthetics, it does afford some benefits as far as not having to knock out certain lines during windstorms.
which seem to be more common, at least the last year or so. There's been a lot of them.
That's what we've been seeing.
So, the question I meant to ask Chris as well is, did you get everything for Christmas that you asked for, or is there something that you didn't
The
get?
answer is yes.
Stop.
Great.
You can excuse yourself, Ray. Jim, is there anything on your list of things that you probably, you had to drop off just because this is the year we had to drop things off?
No, I mean, I'm still, no, so from what I could see, there were very few changes to what my requested budget was. In fact, I think with the winter maintenance, probably underestimated, I underestimated what it's costing us. But I had predicted we weren't gonna get snow this year, so, no, I think I'm,
Okay. Any other questions on the general public works budget? So let's move on to the water enterprise funds. Great. And the sewer as well. Let's go with the water. For those interested, it begins on page 214. So again, we'll start out with the same methodology, accomplishments and future goals.
So this is with the water department.
Yep.
I will mention that it is broken up into essentially treatment over at the water treatment plant and distribution. Glen oversees all the treatment as well as the booster pumps that I believe we have 5 of them throughout town. And Tim oversees the actual network, the water mains. We do a whole host of maintenance in addition to emergency repairs. We have hydrant replacements that we do each year. We do a fair amount of flushing of the hydrants. Those flush out debris. And we do a number of repairs. I mean, unfortunately, we do have an aging infrastructure. So there doesn't seem to be a shortage of breaks here and there. So those are the main parts. As far as the division itself, over at the treatment plant, they've made quite a few improvements, especially in the communication systems with the booster. I was just informed today, one of the last piece of the SCADA system, which is the main communication, we have a tower that was going in, so that's going to greatly aid our response in knowing what's happening at the facilities. They've done a number of upgrades to the treatment plant itself. I've been quite impressed since I've gotten here. It's a high priority, obviously, the cleanliness of the water. So, and I think that the town itself has done a great job with managing the lake, which helps. And all of that is overseen, a lot of that is overseen by the water department. As far as specific accomplishments, we've changed gaskets and piping to generator cooling systems, the SCADA system, as I mentioned, and we did replace 270 feet of old cast iron pipe. The cast iron pipe is what typically will break, unfortunately. It's not as strong as the ductile iron that we use today. But so we're looking at targets where it makes the most sense. And again, one of the goals is to kind of coordinate with the other projects that we have going on, whether it be the gas company, especially with our roads program as well.
What is the SCADA system?
I may have to defer to Glen Alt on that to give more of I guess, an overview of what it entails.
The SCADA system, that's what the operators use to run the entire plant. That way we don't have to have as many personnel on at a time. It's basically a computer program. You can start pumps, stop them, watch all the parameters for the water to make sure it's clean. And it saves money in the long run. It's simplified. If we didn't have it, we'd have to have at least twice as many personnel up there, because everything would have to be done manually.
Who maintains the system?
Right now, the new system was just put in, and the company is.
It's under warranty. It's
It's
under
under
regular
warranty.
warranty maintenance.
So it doesn't need anything like an IT infrastructure support or anything like that? It sounds like it's it's like a software system?
Software system.
It's all provided by the company we purchased it from.
Because,
I'm sorry?
with inbuilt triggers, if something goes wrong, it sends
Yeah.
signals.
Yes, yeah, it'll send out alarms.
Yeah.
Is the replacements, like such as the cast iron pipes or other things, is that reactionary? Or do you actually have an inventory of items that you plan on tackling over a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
We've certainly, we have an inventory. Unfortunately, a lot of it is extremely old. So, and you can't always judge by what's on a plan from 1930. A lot of it is, you know, we have an indication. We know the type of materials that we use then. So there is a little bit of a reactionary to it. In other words, if we have an area that is susceptible to a number of breaks, we look at those would be the areas that we target. Again, trying to coordinate with the roads program because it's a more efficient way. If we have to go out and replace a main without a road that we were going to overlay, then we're going to have to, like the gas company, put a permanent patch on. So I don't want to say that there's no reactionary to it, but they do. We do have a pretty good inventory. We're always looking at it. We're always looking at the plans, looking at what's happening out in the field. And we do have some ideas as to where our next main replacements are going to go.
Do you have sensors, or is it maybe embarrassing stuff? Is this just old school, you wait until somebody reports pressure drop and you investigate it from there, or do we have any, is there any way to monitor it?
Well, through the plant, the treatment plant, they will see when there's a large draw. They have very good records as to what's happening when high volume flows are, and when they're occurring outside of an area or time frame. They will, they'll call over to the distribution side, take a look at, and you try and target based on booster pumps, where the pumps are working over time. It gets you in a general area. An awful lot of times we get calls from residents, hey, I have low pressure, or I saw out in the backyard, because these mains, we have easements throughout the town. They're not all located in the street. So it's a lot of observation.
Do these mains, the cast iron ones, have buildup on the inside so that the diameter is narrower and narrower?
There's always some buildup. I think with the pressures that we have in town are pretty good. They do flush out.
I'm not going to ask this next question. It's just purely, just curiosity. But my curiosity is.
I think I can
Go for it,
I
Karen.
think I can answer her question, because I participated in something last year where you checked the water at so many hundreds of houses.
Yeah.
But that was more contamination from your copper pipes, I thought, the sort of the
We
lead solders and things like that.
well, through our
Read my mind.
yeah, I mean, through our permits with Mass DEP, we do have to do testing of lead. I'm assuming that's what you're referring to. And you're allowed so much because it's naturally occurring. And it is in pipes, and so we do sampling. I think every 2 years, and so far we've been well within the limits of what's allowed.
Our water appears to be cleaner than most communities. Is that accurate, or is that?
I've worked for
flat on my part?
I've worked for several other communities. I can tell you that we do a very good job here as far as the care that has been taken with our water system is really impressive.
So
So last year, we were gonna replace some chemical tanks. Did we do that, or did we choose not to?
I think we've done portions of it. I think some of it has been done in-house, some of it, and I know Glen's staff has been working on those projects. I don't know if you want to
Yeah,
add.
we replaced two different chemical tanks in-house at quite a savings. The system was evaluated a few years ago. Estimates were given, and I don't know, have those figures what they were, but we did it in-house for a lot less.
Okay.
And that's what we're continuing to try and do as much as we can.
You have other tanks, obviously, more than just two.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. So do you have, again, an evaluation of the tanks and their risks? Because these are chemical tanks, right?
Correct.
Is there an evaluation of those tanks to know that need to replace this one within a year, 6 months, 5
Yes,
years?
Yes, that was part of the evaluation that was done several years ago. And so we're targeting the ones in order the best we can.
Okay.
Plus, they have a set lifespan too, some of the
Right.
tanks.
Okay.
What was the chemicals too, cruising around at 100,000 that doubled in 2018? What was?
Can you repeat that into the microphone, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Under the expenses, chemicals, 07 to 2018, it went from 106 to 205. Chemicals doubling.
Part of it was the price of one chemical skyrocketing. And you gotta have it, so.
We go out to bid on chemicals, we're part of a consortium, so we go out to bid on chemicals every 3 years. And we try to get the best price, we're, I think, 12, 15 communities, so it's not like we're going individually.
Right.
All right, we can sort with 12 or 15
Yes.
different
Yes.
communities probably in this area, I'd say.
Yes.
Not necessarily, but yes.
Oh, okay.
Do you have one significant contractor you work with?
As far as for maintenance of the.
Outside services, right, contracted services?
We have a few that we,
I was looking for a significant one. I mean, is it spread out amongst many, or is it one or two?
I believe we go out to bid. We have 3 that come in that we can use under contract. So we try and spread it out as best as possible. A lot of it is availability and cost, who's ever cheapest.
Any other questions on the water side of things? Okay, let's move on to the sewer. The sewer enterprise funds.
Yep. Overall, the sewer, as you mentioned, it's an enterprise fund, so it is funded by the ratepayers. I think one of the most important things is that I think rates have remained steady. There hasn't, I think at one point, rates did fluctuate year to year. So I think that's one of the most important things to identify as far as operating an enterprise fund. The sewer system itself involves the mains throughout town, and then all the sewage that's collected and is treated over at Greater Lawrence Sanitary District. So within the budget itself, it does include maintenance of the existing lines and the fees that we pay based on the flow that we send to Greater Lawrence Sanitary District. If you look at the overall budget, it's $4,741,484. We do have an increase of about $81,000 or 1.7%. As part of, within the budget itself, as I mentioned, it does have the GLSD cost and it does have the maintenance cost. We have 22 pump stations, I believe, that we have to maintain. Those do take a considerable amount of maintenance as far as the pumps and their electricity costs associated with each one of those. So those are, and we do have, I should mention that we have 6.5 full-time personnel equivalents. We do share resources between the water and sewer personnel. but they are split. Their actual time on each budget or each category is split. And that's all accounted for within the,
So your
within the
salary
budget.
costs are going down. Is there a logical explanation of shifting of cost, or is that because the person's left and you're replacing them with a less expensive person, or all the above?
Yeah, I think it's,
Replacement of, people that are left.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no changes in FTEs.
yeah.
No, that's fine. I was just, exactly. So, did someone get a pay cut?
So, just out of curiosity, how do you degrease?
That's for the wet wells.
Yep.
I believe that's what, again, that's another program that Glen oversees. I mean, he can talk at length, I'm
Is
sure.
it a chemical degreasement? Is it a mechanical degreasement?
Mechanical.
It's a mechanical, so you actually, okay.
Not something you'd want to do at home either.
So I see in here the assessment from the GLSD is the same. It's up, what, $298,000? Is that a pretty firm number?
Those are estimates that they give us. I should mention, I am the town's representative on the commission, GLSD. It's, I won't say that they're firm projections. Again, it's an estimate based on what they've provided us. Flows have been pretty consistent. We will have some increase with the Princeton property development, so we account for a little bit of that in there.
Okay. Questions on the sewer? No. You know, likewise for what I said to Chris, you know, keep us up and running. We do
Yeah.
appreciate the infrastructure, the public works on the water and the sewer elements of it. We also like to have a little, I make sure our youth have a little bit of fun, so if Rick could join you at the table so we can see what's going on in the youth services business.
Page 179.
No, thank you.
Page 179. Ed, can you pull your mic closer? Tim, pull your mic closer, please, down. Thank you. We've been accused of not being recorded.
I see.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for
Go
having
for
me.
it.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
For new folks, Rick Gorman, just celebrated my 30th year as North Andover's Youth and Services Director. Exciting year at the Youth Center. We had a number of accomplishments in the past year. The department has been operational for 30 years. The Youth Center has actually been open since 2000, so we're on the brink of celebrating our 18th year with actually having the facility, along with all the programs. I supervise 4 full-time staff people that fall in the following categories. Demi Tetrolt is our assistant director. Justin Barry is our recreation coordinator. Kyle Palladino is our social programs coordinator. And Laura Stevens is a very valuable support services coordinator. We work very closely with the schools, so you'll see some of our accomplishments in this past year was working with, collaborating with the high school and the middle school on a variety of social and emotional learning programs. As well as partnering with special education to include kids from the special education into our summer programs. Besides that, we successfully transferred, after a 5-year evaluation of our skateboard park, we actually are collaborating with Andover. The town gifted our skateboard equipment to Andover, so our kids are actually able to use the Andover Youth Services Skateboard Park, which is a huge park. The 5-year period was basically that kids in North Andover weren't skateboarding when Sasha was around. Besides that, a number of different programming things that were very big accomplishments for this year was our biggest year ever with our holiday drives, both at Thanksgiving and Christmas. We serviced over 300 kids at our Christmas drive this year. We're also exploring different ways on our professional development, both for our full-time and our seasonal employees. So you'll see a number of other accomplishments too, but it's been a very good year here at the Youth Center.
Yeah. I mean, just your first sentence, or a couple of sentences and the significant changes says a lot, Rick. I mean, collaborate with the North Andover School Department to include special education students in the summer programming, and you expanded it from 6 to 7 weeks. I think that alone says a lot.
The department was recognized by the Board of Selectmen last summer. I do think that we get a lot of great feedback about our summer programs because we deal with so many young families, sometimes which doesn't get known as all of the support services stuff we're doing. But the things we were able to do with the summer program and the special education kids that we incorporated was awesome. It was great for the special ed kids and the special ed department here at the public schools, but also for our kids working with them. So we're looking for some growth in that this year, taking it to a whole new level.
Great. Question relative to the high school participants, to increase high school youth center membership by 10%.
Sure.
It seems to me back in my kids, they sort of dropped off after 8th or 9th grade, 8th grade. So
Yes.
what's the plan?
So
there?
it's been an ongoing issue since we built the youth center. We were actually able to retaining a lot of 9th and 10th graders. There's a lot of things, technology, life speeding out of control, where we're starting to actually see less 10th graders. This year, actually, we have more 10th graders and 9th graders than we've had in the last 3 years. But our goal is to really just start offering more services that will retain a lot more of the high school kids. A lot of our high school kids make up our part-time employment. They make up our entire leadership programs and a lot of our recreational program. But we're trying to go after basically music and arts. We have a long-range plan to build a music clubhouse, a form of a music clubhouse. We actually just got a $25,000 grant from the state to help get us started with that. So we're looking at avenues around that we can kind of retain a lot of the high school kids for activities and programs. The big thing that we are dealing with high school kids on a large percentage is kids. It's tough being a kid right now. A lot of stuff, teen anxiety is out of control. We started a podcast at the youth center, and last week we actually spoke on teen anxiety. It is a big issue in this town. I'm trying to make more people aware of that. So, we're looking at that. So our goal is that we deal with mostly middle school through high school kids. The reality is in the summertime we're dealing with 5-year-olds, and our college kids keep coming back. So it's not really just the middle school and high school, it's all. But we are ambitious. We want to get more high school kids involved, so that's my staff. We got some ideas how we're going to do that. It's a challenge. It's going to be a challenge, but I think we're very excited about trying to make that happen.
Questions?
Absolutely.
I just was going to ask more about the music clubhouse, so
Sure.
what that looks like.
So basically what we have been evaluating, so we were in a year-long youth assessment, which was completed last week and will actually be revealed to the town manager, the superintendent of school, our two boards that we're involved with on March 28th. And basically, it was good. It was not just the youth center. It was youth in general. And what we were actually able to find out with that assessment, as well as our own meeting with kids with what we call dialogue sessions, is that kids want to have more in the arts, and in particular music. So everybody, as you remember the old days, we used to have like battles of the bands at the barn and stuff. That's not really the music kids are in now. They're interested in their own beats and creating their own music. And what we found out that the high school kids, this was something they was like, I would come to the youth center for something like this. So we actually, Diana DeZoglio was very instrumental in getting the starter money for it. It's going to cost a lot more than $25,000, but it'll allow us some equipment. We're actually going to be working in collaboration with the YMCA to actually use their music clubhouse. My ultimate goal is, as we expand the arts and music programs, that we'll actually have our own music, and we can't actually call it because it's a national organization called Music Clubs, but we'll have our own music program on site, and my hope is within 2 years.
And so does that eventually, is it someone from the school, like a music teacher that's helping to lead that?
So
or
we're
how
going to
does that-
collaborate with the school department, because as you know, my music skill is probably not that great. But we're looking to collaborate with both the music programs at both the middle school and the high school. And we are working, Dave Bickle, who's a town resident, who I just found out is actually one of the people behind Music Clubhouse, so he is going to volunteer as a resident to help us kick this off. So we need, a lot of things that we can start here. Music is not one of them, so we'll be relying on the resources that are out in our community right now.
Very cool.
Same goes with the art.
Yes, yes. We've found that with the high school kids, you know, middle school kids, we describe the youth center for middle school kids as it's a clubhouse. They come and they hang out, they participate in the program. With high school kids, they come for more specific purposes. Weight room, staying in shape, playing basketball, and as you know, our leadership programs, we have 5 high school leadership groups that services over 100 kids. But they come for a specific person and leave. So what we're trying to do is try to engage some programs that, not that they'll hang out like the middle school kids, but they'll hang out a little bit more than they are just coming to one activity. And what the kids are experimenting, they want more art, they want more drama. You know, a lot of these things exist in the school, but they don't exist outside of the school. So our whole thing is, how do we work, and I've talked to Jen Price and Greg Gilligan about this, how do we work with our school department to almost incorporate that? We kind of do a lot of that after school, maybe using their own facilities. So again, it's a very bare bones strategy right now, but I'm pretty excited about it. It's one of my big, I technically have about 6 more years before I retire, and that's going to be one of my big issues, is to increase the arts programs that we're doing at the youth center.
Several years ago, I remember you had a chess competition,
Yeah.
and my kids were on the brochures
Sure.
that you sent. Do you still have?
We still do it. It's an afternoon activity that we do. We've got some kids that are really into it, and we've got some kids we're trying to teach to get into it. About once a week, we actually bring out all the chess boards, and we actually do it with our staff or whatever. So what we're trying to do is engage whatever kids want to do, unless it's ridiculously crazy, like they really want to have a trampoline and a few other things that I get liability issues with. But any idea that kids bring up, we try to incorporate some way or another, whether it's a program, a one-day activity, that also with our whole field trip thing. So we're trying to get kids out of the community for field trips, but also community service. We basically have 5 of our high school leadership groups are constantly out of this community at Carunum and at the Boys and Girls Club Academic Center, and trying to engage. And then one of our biggest things is I'm part of what's called the Core 4, which is North Andover's youth director, Andover's youth director, the head of the YMCA, and the head of the Boys and Girls Club. And those 4 organizations, we have a summit every June up at Bear Island, and then we come back to our communities and do some things with our own community, and then we connect 3 times a year with everybody from those other 3 groups. So just trying to get things more for kids that, you know, really want to get into leadership or all these other different activities. We're more than just when you drive down Johnson Street in the summer and the barn doors are open. We're more than a boys' club and kids playing basketball, and that's what we're trying to bring across to people.
So can the kids come with suggestions, and or who do they need to go to or approach to suggest?
They come to the staff. Kids are pretty good with that. We have a board every day that the kids can sign up what they want to do, and, you know, just talking to the staff, it happens. Things that are happening there every day, they create games and whatever. So we really encourage our members that are there every day to, you know, be proactive in what they want to do. We entertain every idea, as crazy as it is, but sometimes we have to put some limits on them, obviously. But it's a pretty happening place.
Good, right.
Encourage you all to come down and see it.
So you talked about your podcast and specifically teen anxiety. So
Sure.
are there some initiatives or additional funding we'll see going forward, or even if it's something you'd like, but obviously hasn't been formally
So
discussed?
not necessarily more funding in my department. We are looking to continue our support services piece, but one of the biggest things is Jen Price has made some major changes within the school department around social and emotional learning. So we're actually working hand by hand with the staff. We sit on committees at both the middle school and the high school to address the issues we're talking about. Today, our podcast was a former kid, and it was on teen resiliency. So what we're trying to do is identify all of the issues a lot of kids are dealing with and helping them, not just them, their parents, with strategies on how we can do this. And the podcast has been a new thing that we're doing to kind of get at the parents and some of our older kids. But we're also, you know, posting it where all of our kids can get after whatever. So I would see not the youth center creating more of that type of thing, Sasha. What I would see is the youth center collaborating with the school department to bring that stuff across.
Okay.
The unique relationship the youth center has with the school is unlike anything else in the state. I'm not sure everybody's aware of that. You know, when the new person started, the social emotional learning director, there was like she's worked in a number of different communities and never seen this. Usually youth centers are a separate entity in the community and not involved because everybody's concerned that, you know, they want something different than the school. What we've been able to do is collaborate. hopefully in the next week, both Jen Price and Andrew Mailer will sign off on a memorandum of understanding, which will actually seal the deal on our communication about kids, which is something that we've been doing, but we're, obviously tightening it up with an MOU. And so those are some of the things that we do. The support services position, Laura Stevens is technically working in the school 15 to 20 hours a week. So it's just been an amazing relationship, and that's been going on since 1988.
So you still go into the schools to do, like
So
you always have
Laura's
to-
running groups. Yep.
during the school day, so
Yes.
that's awesome.
Yes, it's continuing to go great. And if anything, it's a great cost share between the municipal department and the school department.
My memory isn't great, but I thought I read or received an email about the youth center trying to raise funds for expansion. Am I getting that confused
Nope.
with the?
No, so it's
Okay.
coming from two different avenues. So Andrew and we're really interested in looking at some renovations, expansion for the youth center.
Okay.
Andrew has done preliminary work on this. We're looking at, correct me, Ray, 2022, I think? 2021.
Well, it says right here, FY '23, $165,000 for architectural services.
Yes, so
So that is all very far away. I got the impression that the raise of money was to be much sooner and for expansion. So can you explain all
So a
this?
couple of things in terms, I'll have to defer to Andrew on that. That was our initial conversations. We haven't done anything beyond what he's looking long-term.
Okay.
We're starting right now, after this youth assessment was done that we just completed.
Yeah.
It's going to kind of reinforce some things that I've been telling Andrew we need to take a look at. There are certain parts of the building we've outgrown. Our
Yeah.
game room is too small, et cetera. So we're looking at that. We're also on a very tight footprint in the old center. So it's not like we can just build out. We've talked about we might have to build onto the basketball court and then replace the basketball court someplace outside. Right. We can go into the field a little bit, but there's conservation issues. So we have a lot of work to do on that. Ultimately, we're looking at potential other space maybe if we had to do some things like that. But in terms of what Andrew's talking about, that is to get some preliminary discussion to get us on the board that we are going to look at potential expansion. Over the next year, I'll be working with Andrew and Ray and Jim to talk about what I think some of those needs are, and then we'll have to figure out how to do it. What's also going on at the same time is just it's annual fundraising that's done for the youth center. So just to be clear, I report to the Youth Services Board of Directors appointed by the Board of Selectmen. But we also have a nonprofit. So the Joseph N. Herman Youth Center, Inc. was created when we started raising our first dollar in 1993. And when we built the building and then turned the building over to the town in 2000, that nonprofit, 501c3, stayed in existence to basically raise money to offset any costs that maybe the town couldn't pay for, or what we originally in 2000 described as a doomsday theory, that at one point in time, if the town went into a real financial situation and couldn't support a youth center, that the nonprofit. I don't have a vote on that committee. It's a group of people that's changed regularly over the last number of years.
Okay.
But they run an annual, we have our auction next week.
Yes.
And what they try to do is to raise like $100,000 a year in a variety of different things. Auction, carnival, annual fund.
Okay.
That is in their money. And then what I do is I present to them in May, after my board approves, a grant request. And we get between $30,000 and $35,000 a year from the nonprofit to pay for things that initially wouldn't be looked at as, immediate things for the town. So if we need a new pool table, it's not something that we're going to have a cost to do that. So that's what they stay in existence for.
Okay. I thought they asked for $2.2 million. I'm sorry.
No,
We're
that's
done.
not at this point in time.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
As you're aware, any expansion or whatever, the youth center is gonna be part of the facility master plan too.
Well, I see that here,
Yeah.
but I thought I remember seeing the email. My kid is at youth center, so I thought they were asking for 2.2 for expansion, so I'm getting it confused with something else.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Rick? No, thank you.
Thank you for your continued support of us. Nice seeing you, Sash.
Jim, I do have one more question. It's a general question, and it's, the guy behind you can answer it as well. So, it's sort of on a very macro basis, on the water and sewer rates. Last 3 years, rates haven't gone up.
Last 6 years.
Last 6 years, the rates haven't even gone up. So your cost must be flat for the last 6 years. it's an open-ended question, Ray. So how is it that we're able to maintain our rates so well? I mean, it is an envy of probably a lot of communities.
We have done a series of things. One of the things we did is we now fund some capital projects through the operating budget. We've taken a different approach. We had a capital investment that was close to 40%, 45% at one stage. Through the budget policy statement, et cetera, that's been reduced dramatically on both water and sewer. So we're keeping with the theory of sustainability. We're sort of a pay as you go, as opposed to coming up with a big project and then having to borrow and it being on the books for a while. So yes, daily costs have gone up. That just makes sense. But the debt has gone down dramatically, which is more than offset it. So I believe the town manager has already, during his budget presentation to the Board of Selectmen, said that most likely that the rates will stay unchanged for a 7th year.
What do our rates compare to other like towns, like a Reading or a North Reading or an Andover?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I mean, a lot of communities are all over the place. You know, that's one of the problems. So that Jennifer doesn't yell at me for not speaking into the mic.
Somebody from the town.
Stan doesn't count. We told you that before. One of the problems we had originally a number of years ago is our rates used to fluctuate dramatically. So one year they would go up anywhere between 5 and 10%, and then they would go down 2%, and so that caused a lot of uncertainty into the community, and the selectmen were never pleased with that. So again, the financial sustainability approach was taken starting about 7 years ago, so that has allowed us to be more consistent versus other municipalities that may use the approach that we used 10, 15 years ago.
Any other questions? Good answers, Jim.
I've left them speechless.
I actually remember that. So if you're just saying that, thinking that through.
So, if there are no more questions, Jim and his team, free to go.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
No, we're fine.
No.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lynn.
Bye, guys. I know, but I feel bad I had to wait that whole time for 10 minutes. It's the wrong order. No, it's not. I know, maybe you. It's not okay.
Next on the agenda, if we want to go for it real quickly, is the review of the minutes and approval of the prior minutes. Those are from February 13th. Do I have a motion at all?
I motion to approve the minutes from the meeting February 13th, 2018.
Second, anyone?
Second?
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Obviously, there's no one here for public comment. I don't have anything formally on new business.
I do.
So I said I don't, but I was going to open it up.
Okay.
Go for it.
First of all, what's the status of doing a joint meeting with the selectmen? Do we have a status on that?
That's not going to happen. I spoke with Phil, and the purpose of that meeting really is, and I applaud Jen for really pushing this thing, but the purpose of that meeting really is a planning meeting before the budget policy is even established. And I said I would continue to talk with Phil in that regards about prior to, probably it was a September timeline.
So next year, we should have it as their first meeting?
First meeting ought to be it. It ought to be out of the blocks right then and there. The other thing I suggested to Phil, but it may be very premature, and I'd look to our two members on the OPEB committee, is having any kind of joint meeting relative to a status update. I think it is just as an aside real quickly, Chuck, I don't know if anyone else went through the material. I did. It was it wasn't something I was going to do on a Sunday afternoon. I was going to do my tax return instead, tax returns. But it was good stuff, good material. It was very eye-opening. So thank you for sending that material out.
But how does that relate to the status of Board of Selectmen? I'm confused.
But
What do you mean, a status meeting
I
with
suggested
them?
to Phil about perhaps having a joint meeting with the OPEB committee to give us status report. Since, how many members from Board of Selectmen? Just one?
Well, why would we do a joint meeting with the OPEB
The
when Chris
board and
is
the
on it?
OPEB and the Selectmen, to find out status of the OPEB. In other words, I suggested to Phil that he actually open up having a special meeting within the Selectmen's meeting to discuss the status of the OPEB. In other words, please give us a presentation. And he'd have to do
But
that.
can't Chris just give that presentation because he's on our OPEB committee?
Oh, yeah.
We have two selectmen
It was,
on it.
it was a suggestion
Oh,
about
okay.
having a joint meeting so that Chris and you guys wouldn't have to present it twice if the selectmen are even interested in hearing
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I think the thought was, and unless I'm wrong, that we have so many diverse on that, so that Chris and the other selectmen would take that back to them. Chuck would represent and take it back to us, and
Okay.
that's how we would cover it.
That's fair.
I don't think we've even gotten that far about presentation to Board of Selectmen.
That's what,
You know where I'd be interested in is really our public forum. Everyone settle down back there. Is probably not the most viewed, and I just want to make sure that this topic is out there because, you know, it depends on which way is the wind blowing and who you might hear from.
I think it actually might be helpful to do it all at once, Jen, rather than, I don't know.
I think
And
we
you-
should
then you-
discuss it on
then you
Thursday
kinda
as a
have-
group
Yeah,
when we
we
want to
have an open
present
meeting
it.
Thursday.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Could you bring it there? Okay,
You know what I mean?
I'll leave
Yeah.
it at that and let you guys
It
come
could
back.
also be like great to have, lots of people kind of chiming in at once, but.
Without question, it builds momentum and awareness, and
Yeah.
yeah. So I
We're
put it
meeting
down on
Thursday.
Thursday. We'll discuss when we're presenting,
Okay.
because we're still in rough draft mode, thanks to Chuck.
I
So-
absolutely understand that.
Yeah.
I just you asked the question about getting together with Board of Selectmen, and that was my.
Yeah, but I don't want to make that just the only focus.
No,
Yeah.
but it's a good opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it should be I assumed it'd be separate and distinct.
What do you mean?
Like the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen.
Yes,
in
I thought it
September,
was. I absolutely
Completely
think
what-
different.
separate and just to be
And we
clear,
cover all of our
separate,
major items.
separate and distinct from then an in-depth OPEB discussion.
Absolutely.
OPEB discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Any other
But that brings
comments?
up, yeah. The other one was, I thought we were asking for a school 5-year budget, and wondering if we made any progress on that.
No, actually, I need to follow up with, as I mentioned to you before, I believe we've actually asked that question. They don't have one. They have a strategic plan, but not a 5-year budget. But I will ask Jim, and I apologize for not having that completed.
No, that's okay, it's not you, I just
They don't
have a very
5-year
high level of concern on that one.
They don't have a 5-year budget. Otherwise, we'd see it.
So how do we deal with that fact, that there is no 5-year budget? Understanding that numbers fluctuate every year, there's major assumptions that would probably have to be made.
So when I think of a 5-year budget, I think of like what Andrew presented for his 5-year forecast. And he bakes in there certain kinds of assumptions about what the revenue stream is going to be and what other streams of cost are going to be. You could almost use that as you want as a baseline for the budget. The problem you have with the school budget, though, is that here, are they providing the town services with that 5-year forecast? Yeah, I get it. Is the school budget, if they had a similar 5-year forecast, are they meeting their strategic objectives?
Right.
And that's the difference between, I'm just trying to make a comparison.
Yeah.
I don't think that they necessarily have that 5-year budget.
So I think you'd
We have
need
more
two.
metrics in
Yeah.
school
Right.
than
So
town.
you would look at so like you would have your 1-year operating budget, and you'd forecast that out over however 5-year for additional 4 years. So you have a 5-year period, and one look would be, okay, if we manage to stay within what we typically get for an increase in our operating budget on a year-over-year basis, it would look like this. We would meet our strategic goals, or we wouldn't. If we, and if there were pieces that were missing, then there would be an additional view that would say, okay, this is best case, we meet all of our strategic goals within the time period we want, and it looks like this.
Yep.
And that's,
Right?
I'm,
A better planning can be achieved, I mean, if you do it for 5 years. And
well, here's where I'm going to say, Andover states what they want versus what they can do. It is written in their document. And I don't want to compare us to another town, except that I am seeking guidance on saying, this is what the budget is within the means of, 2.5% increase, right? Or 3%. But here's what we really want, and there's a funding gap. We don't have a number around that. We don't have a discussion around that. And I know we run differently, but I would
actually suggest that we have pieces of information that you could build up with fair assumptions to show that gap between what we're able to pay for, the revenue stream, and what our strategic goals we're not able to get. And
so are you suggesting that we do this and not the school?
I'm just suggesting that information's there, and I will actually bring it up with Jim. But that information is there because we know we need X number of teachers. We know we need this or that, right? We know we can ballpark that cost. But I would like to see Jim say, I've got that information right.
Yes, and
Yes.
I apologize if it feels like I'm beating a dead horse.
No,
but there
actually-
must be proactive forward planning, understanding those numbers are not set in stone, but we acknowledge.
Okay.
It serves another purpose, by the way, which is to alert people to what could we do if we had more resources, right? Want to get the number from 29 kids per class to 24? Here's how much money that takes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
I
an
think that-
education piece.
By the way, that's millions and millions and millions of dollars per year.
That's without
So
question.
there's been no real discussion about it's like we're fine, we're here where we are. As long as the economy is fine, we'll be fine. We would like there's no like here's what we could do if we had extra.
Yeah.
And look where we could be. And there's all kinds of quantifiable, very tangible top priorities, like our school system.
Well, we could
and
take it
OPEB
further.
and things
We
like
could
that.
say, this is where we want to be with OPEB. This is where we are. We discussed this, right? That format. This is where we are. This is where we want to be. Here's the gap. And this is what it might take over the years
So
to
if you
do.
recall,
Same with
the very
school.
beginning of this budget process of
I know.
FinCom,
I asked the same question.
we actually brought this up.
Uh-huh.
And getting pretty close to the letter having to be formalized and drafted. But I want to talk about the letter in a second. But I will reach out to Jim. I'll call him tomorrow, find out what his thoughts are on this matter. He'll know exactly where I'm coming from. And I do too think there is enough information that we could throw something in basically saying, here's a gap. You could actually get away with saying, based on these assumptions, we have this gap. And it's a valid gap. How far off could we be?
Mm-hmm.
Is your goal, though, to inform the citizens so that they're better equipped to vote on things? I mean, is your...
Yes.
Okay.
Another motivation, though, is to incentivize the town to do what it takes to generate the revenue so we can do these things, like recruit new businesses and,
Absolutely. In fact, to me,
you have to show people that this is not only needed, but really if we're going to get, for example, from the 5th percentile or 95th percentile and up where we're going to get to be, things need to change. We need lots of money
Yeah,
from
exactly.
new sources that don't exist right now.
In a good economic time, which we are in as of today.
My son flew up on American this Sunday, and he said there was an advertisement for North Andover at the airport. I'll be at American tomorrow. Have you seen it? It says something about North Andover. And he said it. I said, did you get a picture of it? He goes, no, but he was telling me
I
about
have one. Yeah, it's right when you walk in.
it. So that's our guys are paying for that?
Yep.
I'll take a picture of it and text it to you tomorrow morning.
No.
So even though the finance committee has to just review things, but again, the question, shouldn't we, while asking questions, also make suggestions for them to think over it, ponder? Because
No, we
it's
don't-
not
we-
just,
There's nothing wrong with us asking questions to get people thinking.
yeah.
I think the questions, and I don't mean to be little about it, we almost had a Facebook moment here with all the advertisements coming across, relative to the IT guy. And the last thing in the world I want to do is see Tide laundry detergent as I'm paying my bills for water.
Well, they
But
can
but
do
you
the
know, you know what I'm
weekend
talking
screen.
about.
Of course I understand
but,
that.
But it's basically the real broad question was, is there a way we can use the
Yeah.
IT vehicle to generate revenue?
Right.
That's like, hadn't thought about that. I
That's
don't
a
think you
good
really-
question.
Yeah.
Who did the,
But not to give the solution.
is the town behind some of the, what do you call them, the corners? They have the,
Oh, you mean where the companies can
landscapers.
add, like I
Yeah.
could, yes. So
like-
the town is behind that as a way to save and make the town look nicer and allowed the businesses to pay out of their own money to advertise.
and did that have to go to some sort of a compliance approval thing before we can start billing?
I don't,
They
No.
take, so
the
you don't
DPW
build
just
that.
ran it.
I don't think we bill them. They take
Just a
on the
donation?
planting. So
Oh,
they're
so
like, I would,
they
if
make it
they're
nice
like,
and they
I'm
just stick it.
maintaining it.
I
Yeah.
bring the mulch, I do the plants,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to take care of it. The only thing the
There's no
town did
cash
was
flow.
buy the
Yeah.
sign, there's no cash flow.
Just a beautiful
Sign.
The kind, the
beautification.
town pays for
Sponsored
the
It's like,
sign.
it's like a
That's it.
beautification
Yes,
initiative.
that's what I was thinking, that why not
And it
for
costs
even
much.
a more.
But our job
grassroots
is not
activity?
to make solutions or recommendations. I think, honestly, this is about educating the citizens, letting them come as a more united and louder front, educated, please. Well,
Well, to your
a
point.
wider span of people.
I don't think a lot of people know that a middle school is on the 5-year plan. I mean, I mentioned that, I got a lot of eyes wide open, and there is a perception.
You mean the building or the fields? Because that's also a
The
confusion,
building,
right?
that building
Yeah.
is probably near its useful life end, and it's
But
constrained.
it's not even on the 5-year.
Yeah, okay, but it's.
I'm just saying, it's
it's
supposedly on the 6 to 10, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think people know that.
They don't know, and they don't know that that they're gonna have empty classrooms next year. I would love to say people are watching us tonight, but they're not. So we have to build momentum in education, and
So I'm hoping that
are we allowed to insist on a 5-year? Or just ask?
We can't insist on anything, you know that.
No, I don't. I'm
Is
asking.
we could do some clouding, I guess, but we can't say we expect to see next week at this time. I will
So
ask
what's our
Jim-
backup plan if the answer is no, we don't
then
have
we
anything?
do
We
have
do
a-
it?
We do have a public forum. Remember the org chart, which is pretty prevalent in town meeting. And to me, this says a lot about us. If I can even find it
You
now.
mean who we report to? I know, where is that?
We're at the top, right here. That says everything to me. You got the people of the town, the very top, and then we're equal members relative to the position on the org chart. So we do have verbal clout. I'll give you an example. If there were budget elements in here that we didn't agree with and we would vote unfavorable recommendation, that would have a sizable clout. That won't happen because of, well, it happened several years ago before the current management. But I don't see that happening as long as current management is working their tails off to bring it all together.
Yes,
And that wouldn't be
which they are. No,
So-
I don't
so
think it would be.
I- And I'm,
think
by the way,
it's-
I also see too, he's done a good job on the annual side of things.
Yeah.
And he's also moving towards more of a long-term looking at things. I mean, we give him a lot of credit, Andrew, a lot of credit relative to the OPEB.
I'm not being negative about what's been done. We are in a great position in this town, thanks to him and the school and the selectmen, everybody working together. But now it's time for a longer-term plan. I don't want to be us drafting it
Oh, I agree.
and letting them revise and fix our.
With that, I agree with you, a longer-term plan. I do. We're moving that way. Because there's been some comments upon, oh geez, should I worry about the OPEB? No, there's no black cloud. Well, what, I mean, I'm sorry, maybe there's a black cloud today or tomorrow, folks, but as the requirement to fund the OPEB gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it shrinks the operating budget more and more.
That's why, I mean, these people are not aware of.
So I get a little concerned about it. And it is I think we've done really well relative to the long-term planning thinking, so.
Actually, I have a question on that.
What?
I gotta find it. Where is it? Okay. Chuck, maybe you can play into this. You see that up there? Oh, it's so small. I'm sorry, I don't know how to expand Google. So we have 9 for, right? This is the OPED group, this is the group insurance, right? And then we go to 11? And then 11.5?
ARC, yeah.
Yeah, that's the ARC, but I thought we couldn't cover that. I thought we could only come in with 8, and yet the bill was 11 million. We could only come in and pay 8 million when the bill was 11. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm
I think last
confused.
year, the ARC was 11, and we paid.
And we paid 11?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's been
This is OPED, guys.
10 and a half to 11, like, for 7 years.
So we're always paying the full bill.
Yeah, but the liability is growing by $5 million per year.
Right, we're not
So we're
paying
not-
down principal. If I had to
Exactly,
make that
exactly,
analogy, you
exactly.
helped me understand. Okay,
Exactly. You're
thank you.
negative amortizing.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, that I
Thanks.
get. We have 3 more scheduled meetings.
But the good news
What?
is, the target, as I think we'll talk about in the next meeting, the target is to get to about halfway funded in the
Yes,
next several years.
yes.
And there's a gold standard to be full funded. It could take 10 years, but it is.
Right,
you know,
with
it-
extensive
it ha-
reserves.
It actually has to be a priority and be in the budget more than twice out of 250 pages.
Right, right,
You know,
right.
just, it's like, it's
That's
like
our
the-
job.
It's like the master facilities plan. We have we have a target, we have a package we're marching to. I don't see this, couple of these areas any different than that.
Yeah, just got a plan.
Though, and you get to bend the cost curve and what you already signed up for, but moving forward, as we bring on new employees, we're
Well,
just gonna
there's 2
keep.
things you can do. You can cut the benefit or you can increase the funding. There's only 2 things to do. And
Or
I think
a
everybody
combination
agrees
of both
that,
for new.
everybody
for new
agrees the
employees.
first thing to do is try to fund it properly so you can keep the promises that were already.
Right, and I think everybody
So-
supports that.
Yeah.
New employees coming in, different.
You gotta move to a new.
Probably jumping,
plan.
we're probably jumping ahead a little
Probably,
bit.
yeah, yeah.
I'm curious about that.
So we have 3 more, we have a couple more meetings on the budgets. Again, I'm not trying to, I try to basically say, here are the significant things to the town. The infrastructure we pretty well covered today, but if there's anything that's not being covered, please make questions. If you see something there that doesn't make sense, you know, the example I came up with once before, and we had a funny on it, was, you guys got enough ammo for the year kind of thing? If you feel like the police department has got some shortfall here and there, this has been pretty much, if you haven't seen it already, a level-funded budget, so they could fill the new kindergarten. So we got 2 more meetings coming up.
What is the next meeting again?
Next meeting is on the
Oh,
20th.
he updated it on his own.
What?
The next meeting is not on the 13th?
No, it's on the 20th. It's the 20th. I kept this original schedule, the 20th. And then we have one on the Monday of the 26th.
And the 20th, who's coming again?
That would be community development with Eric, and we have elder services.
Okay, hold on a second.
Hey, Tim, can I assume, I was looking at the letter briefly, just to kind of how it was structured. Not that much change from this year to last year. The trends are pretty similar. So in terms of reconstructing that letter, are we gonna stick to that format? and just
Stick to that format.
wordsmith
If
it a
he
little
wants
bit?
to, I always like to say, geez, you're struggling with a little bit, do an outline. Send me the outline, what you think you want to do, and fill in the blanks. We'll fill in the blanks. Outlines really are very helpful as far
Well,
as,
the other letter from last year, I mean, most
it's a
of the
good
stuff.
structure.
Yeah, I mean, if you like that letter, it's,
Yeah, my goal really is.
The letter from the year before.
well, that's,
My goal really, guys, is to shrink some of the areas that are pretty consistent and focus on those areas that are extremely important long-term to the town, so, if there's any objection to that.
would you envision, to your point, shrinking it down from 20-some-odd pages to 15, then adding 2 or 3 pages on OPED if you wanted to inform and educate?
Something like that, and yeah, I know you're tongue in cheek on the 20 pages, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it was only 3 last year, wasn't it?
It was small though, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was,
Smaller.
No.
Oh, no. It
We
was
cut it.
the first year, Karen.
I was
yeah.
looking at something else then.
First year was
You are
huge.
reading something. Yes. There's only our letter,
Yeah.
so it should be. about
It was in the.
3.
It's in the beginning of your
Oh,
budget
I was
book.
looking, all right, I'm sorry, I was looking at the, it must have been the,
Okay, just email me if you don't
It
know
was
where it is, and
2.5
I'll just
or 3
attach it
pages,
versus
that's
giving
it.
you a Google link. 'cause
Correct.
it's
I think I
Google
was looking
things.
at the warrant.
Oh.
That would be way longer than 20, yeah.
I just looked at the sections that we had reviewed.
Also, too, is
It used to be a paragraph.
That's why I need to print
long.
stuff off, because I never know.
Oh,
what I'm reading
yeah,
from.
yeah,
I'm Google
yeah.
Docs.
6 years ago, the report was.
We looked
about
at
like
it,
that.
we're okay.
That's it.
Yeah,
Um,
you and I
one
went
page,
together.
right.
It was a bit of a joke.
What is the meeting on the 26th? I missed it in the 26th, but again, for everybody's edification, who is coming on the 26th?
The 26th is the Community Preservation Committee and the Stevens Library. Also, too, we probably, at that point in time, need to start hammering out the letter in more detail. Angela, question, we have one more meeting, we have a publicly held meeting, was it the April 4th? April 3rd, and then April 4th is scheduled, but I think right after the April 3rd meeting, we're able to vote on the operating budget right away.
April 4th, we didn't schedule an April. April 3rd, there was like a meeting right after, there's a public hearing, and then right after the public hearing, we had a regular meeting, right on April 3rd. So it's like having 2 meetings in a day.
Right,
So they have to have two
we're gonna be
agendas.
having 2 meetings that day, for sure.
Right.
I think it was originally scheduled to have one the following day, by the way.
Oh, okay, I mean, I
Originally
can
scheduled.
schedule one.
No.
Okay.
But we need to be thinking strategically relative to that letter, because it's drop dead as the April 6th, if I get that not the date right, that we needed it to be in the town's hands. So with that in mind, I'd like to think that we could polish after the public hearing and vote on the budget. We could polish the letter and go out and have some drinks afterwards, or whatever people want, so.
So what does that mean? Can we set some internal deadlines then?
I would
Because it would be, and could you explain to us how you foresee this going? Like, are we working off of a Google Doc, or people sending around their sections to look at together?
Or
would
just you and I are
personally-
only doing our section, and then we're gonna have it ready for what meeting? We
I
said
guess
was
I would
draft.
prefer, and you guys tell me if this sounds, like if we had a date where you had to email it around before our meeting, so everyone had the opportunity to
So
review
by-
everyone else's stuff before our meeting. We talked.
So by March 26th, I want everyone's things to be mailed around.
If
so
our
that-
meeting is March 26th, can we have it by like Sunday?
The Sunday before,
Sun-
which is
the
the
Sunday
25th,
before?
March 25th.
Where's my note to start on it?
I like that.
The way we-
And my bias, and it is a bias, is Word documents. I haven't figured out how to edit in Google. But if everyone could do a Word document, I'd be much more comfortable. Call me old-fashioned, but right now, Word document works best
I
for
already
me.
did it in Word Perfect, is that okay?
Oh, my God.
Nice job.
They still live amongst us.
I have a note on my birthday to start the letter,
It's on my
but if I don't,
It's on my floppy, I'll mail it.
State of the art.
not telling you. I'm
Mine
too
did.
busy to.
Okay, is there anything else we need to discuss? All right, is there a motion here?
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, guys.